You asked what burns brighter than a star. Here is the answer. Kaer Morhen's claws grip snow-clad peaks, its stones gnawed by time. Novigrad's canals choke on brine and lantern glow, hiding rot. Beauclair's marble bleeds gold at sunset, yet vines strangle colonnades. The eternal fire cults plague a slow fuse lit across centuries. Hiding rot, what did they offer? Who still waits? Novigrad promised freedom, Beauclair glory, the Lodge destiny. Their splendor masked a truth, all were stages for a darker rite. The eternal fire cult did not merely spread plagues, he wove it into a tapestry of suffering, each victim a thread in a 1,000-year sacrifice. The pestilence was no accident. It was a hymn, a slow burning of the city's soul to feed something ancient, something patient. What if the rot beneath those gilded promises was never accidental? What if the cult's fire still smolders, waiting for the final spark? The question remains, who or what still holds the match? In the shadow of the conjunction's upheaval, Novigrad rose from chaos. A free port born of desperation, its docks swallowed merchants and miracles alike. The eternal fire cult arrived with the first ships, their presence a footnote, their purpose a riddle. Whispers suggest the plague was no contagion, but a covenant. 1,000 years of waiting, of kindling a flame in the dark. The cult's fire did not consummate counted. Each life lost a tally, each fevered breath a verse in an incantation older than the spheres. What if the cost of Novigrad's wealth was written in the blood of its first sick? The eternal fire did not seek ruin, they sought alignment, a ritual etched across centuries, its climax still deferred. The plague was but the first spark. Some believe the cult's hymns were maps, their sacrifices gears in a clockwork ritual. The city's growth, its greed, its sin all fuel, but what door does their fire seek to unbar? And who among Novigrad's descendants bears the mark of the first pyre? The cult vanished, but their work remains. The eternal fire does not die, it bides, and in the gutters where the plague first festered, the embers still whisper. Waiting, what if the final spark is yet to come? The markets shimmered with spices and silver, their chaos a hymn to Novigrad's hunger. The Lodge of Sorceresses wove power through whispered treaties, their shadows longer than their spells. Beyond the city's reach, the wild hunt circlet a storm held at bay by elven thorns. 1,000 years of empires rose here, their bones buried beneath mosaics. The eternal fire cult moved unseen, their rituals etched in ash between heartbeats. Some say the plague was no accident. A child's laugh, a merchant's cough, how easily the first embers spread. The lodge turned its gaze to alchemy, blind to the rot in their own halls. Novigrad's pride became its chokehold, no hand dared stop what seemed inevitable. The wild hunt's howl grew louder, but the city mistook it for wind. What if the eternal fire's design was not to destroy, but to refine? To forge a world ripe for the portal's opening. The plague's shadow crept, a slow unraveling of threads only the cult could see. Gold leaf and blood red ran parallel in the streets. The lodge's grandest ritual that year, a festival of light, blazed unaware, it lit the match. And in the gutters where the plague first festered, the embers still whisper, waiting. What if the final spark is yet to come? The gutters choked, the embers hissed. A brazier lit in Novigrad's docks, its flame carried by sailors, merchants, the desperate. Freeport open veins, a plague that crawled like a whispered prayer. Some say the eternal fire cult did not curse the city, they baptized it, a first blood for a gate unseen. The records fracture. A merchant's ledger, a sailor's last word, snippets of fever dreams. The light in the dark, a price paid in rot. Sintra fell not to war but to a clock turning. The school of the cat burned as the first gear ground. Broccolin's trees withered where the ritual's shadow touched. 1,000 years, 1,000 sacrifices. The cult's hymns speak of Tur Na Lia's threshold, a place where time bleeds backward. Novigrad's plague was not a mistake. It was a comma in a sentence not yet ended. The voice drops, whisper now. The cult's hands in the disease, the trade winds, the city's own greed. They needed chaos. They needed death as a key. What if the final spark is not yet to come? What if it's already burning? And what if the gate, when it opens, lets in not gods, but the echoes of every soul the cult devoured? The plague was the match, the world is the kindling. The conjunction was a storm, this thighs was a slow burn. They didn't need to tear the sky, they only needed to whisper in the cracks. 1,000 years of quiet feasting, of poison in the blood of cities. The monsters came with the light. The rot came with the cult, and here is where the rot outlived the storm. The plague did not rise, it fell, a shiver through Novigrad's bones. The eternal fire cult's hymns, not the alchemists, birthed the rot. 1,000 years of preparation, 1,000 years of waiting. What if the pestilence was not a mistake, but a key? The cult's priests wove sickness into the city's veins, not to kill, but to unmake. To thin the walls between flesh and flame. The hen Kaer blood slept in shadows, its carriers unaware. Their power-latent ancient became the lock's tumblers. The wild hunt circled, elven eyes gleaming. Their presence twisted the ritual's edge. A blade with two masters. Did the cult know the hunt would come? Or did they offer the plague as a lure, a feast for something hungrier? The streets cracked, the river reeked. Novigrad's people burned with fever, their suffering a language the cosmos understood. No portal opened, no sky split. Only a slow, screaming unraveling. The city's life force siphoned to feed a nameless hunger. The hen Kaer died with their kin, the hunt vanished. The cult's fire went cold, but the rot remains. What is a ritual if not a debt? What is a city if not a wound? And what is grief if not the echo of a door left ajar? The stones breathe, the canals choke. 1,000 years of rot hums in the marrow of Novigrad's bones. Faded sigils of the Lodge of Sorceresses crack like dried blood across threshold stones, warnings ignored, or perhaps invitations. The last wish Jinn no longer speaks. Its silence is a wound that will not close. They came not as conquerors, but as midwives. The eternal fire cult did not spread the plagues, he planted it, seed in wound, root in grief. A ritual measured in generations, not moments, each victim a verse, each death a brick in the archway to somewhere else. The city's agony was their hymn. Ternalia whispers in the fog now, not the myth, the thing itself. A shape behind the veil watching. The cult's first blood was never the end, it was the comma. The pause before the sentence. What waits for the final word? What debt does the city still owe? The Jinn's glass eye reflects nothing. Only the weight of 1,000 unspoken wishes pressing. The ritual is not done. The fire is not eternal, it is patient. Detlef van der Aretine, a vampire whose hunger for secrets outlasts his victims, lingered in Novigrad's shadows. His ledger of debts and sins remained closed even to the dead. The Wild Hunt's elven warden, nameless in all but myth, rode the storm that spread the plague. Their silver eyes burned with a hunger older than the blight. High sorceress Mavidat of the Lodge, whose visions foretold a fire that consumes and renews, left no spell to halt the rot. Her silence was a language the ritual understood. Regis, king of the damned, watched from his crypt's empire of ash and bone, trembling at the edges of this reckoning. Did he taste the fire's promise or its ruin? No chronicle binds these figures to the cult's design. Yet their footprints in ash and prophecy whisper a truth. The plague was not an accident, it was an overture. 1,000 years of waiting, etched in fever and shadow as the fire held its breath. The medallions lie half-buried in Novigrad's gutters, their silver pitted with the same black rot that ate the city's lungs. Each bears the Witcher school sigil, a pentagram choked by thorn-etched runes, not charms, not warnings, invitations. The Lodge of Sorceresses obsidian pins glint in pawnshop windows, their crescent moons split by cracks that mirror the fractures in the city's fate. And beneath it all, the hen Kaer blood hums, a genetic hymn to doorways no eye can see. But these threads tangle in a loom the canon refuses to name. The eternal fire cult did not spill the plague. They stirred it. 1,000-year ritual demands kindling suffering, sacrifice, the slow burning of a city's soul. The first blood was not a mistake, it was a spark. The medallions planted like seeds in the rot, the sigils, glyphs to bind the fever's rhythm. The hen Kaer, unwitting sentinels at the threshold. How many died thinking the fire was chaos? How many priests smiled as their own veins turned to ash? The plague's end left no resolution, only relics. A medallion's edge still warms in the rain. A pin's crack pulses like a heartbeat. The hen Kaer blood sleeps, but the fire waits. Novigrad's streets are a palimpsest of prayers and curses. What ritual requires a city as its offering? What door demands 1,000 years to unlock? The answer lies in the silence between the canon's lines. The fire does not forget, it is not done. The fire remembers, it burns in the marrow of Novigrad's stones, in the hollow eyes of the sick. A ritual uncoils here, its roots deeper than the city's canals. The eternal fire cult did not spill plague by chance. They spilled it by design. 1,000 years is not a span for mortals, it is a breath for gods. What does ambition taste like when measured in centuries? Bitter, always bitter. The conjunction of the spheres did not shatter the world, it bent it. And in that bend the cult pressed its palm, shaping a lever. The plague was not a weapon. It was a key turned slow in a lock of stars, each death a glyph. Each scream a thread in the tapestry. The Witchers called it a catastrophe, they called it a test. They did not see the altar beneath the rot. What does it cost to court eternity? Novigrad's streets paid in gold, in blood, in the silence of the dying. The cult's fire is not holy. It is hungry, it devours time itself. The plague was the first blood of a ritual that will not end until the spheres kiss again. And when the fire rises, it will not carry the city's sins, it will carry its soul. What if Novigrad's plague was no accident? Whispers claim the eternal fire cult bred it as a sacrifice, a calculated step in a 1,000-year ritual to bind their god. The conjunction birthed monsters, but this fire fed on human ash. Shadows stretch beyond that night.